Welcome to The Pulse. I'm Jennifer Ray. Today we are highlighting the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra. We are here at the Wayzata Community Church, the home of the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra. I have three very special guests today: Marlene Pauley, the conductor, Dr. Marion Judish, concertmaster, and Dr. Brent Runquist, past president and trombonist. My first guest is our fabulous conductor for the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra, which is quite a mouthful, and that is Marlene Pauley. Marlene, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jen.
Thanks. Nice to have you back again.
Great to be here.
Now, I have kind of a major question, and I'm not sure how we even answer this because I'm sure it's packed full of a lot of information. But how do you decide what kind of a program you're going to have? What kind of a music you choose to play? Can the orchestra play it? Can the orchestra play any kind of music that you choose? How the whole process evolves and is created, because I know you're the creator of it.
Mm-hmm. I usually get an idea about a piece of music that I want to do or a soloist I want to feature. That's usually what starts the ball rolling. Like for the concert we're doing in November, Aaron Keefe, who is the concertmaster of Minnesota Orchestra, has played with us as a soloist. Tony Ross, principal cellist of the Minnesota Orchestra, has also played with us as soloist, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get both of them together to play one of my most favorite pieces of all time, Brahms' Concerto for Violin and Cello and Orchestra. So that's how that program, that was the germ of that program. And first I had to call them and see if they would want to do that, and they both said yes, and then, so to fill out the program, so I'm thinking, okay, a duo. What other duos could I do? And then I got this idea. I get ideas when I'm walking. When I'm in nature, ideas come to me. I think because music is so much a part of our world, our natural world, I think that's probably why, I'm not sure, but anyway, an idea came to me that it would be great to commission a piece of music about the beauty of Minnesota and pair it with poems written about the fall in Minnesota. So that's exactly what we did. I had heard a really great piece last year by a Minnesota composer, Jordan Cox, who's making a big splash in LA writing for film and video games. And he's a fantastic composer. And so I contacted him and I said, would you be willing to write a piece of music for the Wayzata Symphony to do a world premiere next year? And he said, yeah. And I said, and I'm thinking of asking Minnesota Poet Laureate Joyce Sutphin to write poems. He said, cool. So then I called Joyce and she said, great. So that's how things happen. And sometimes I get a little bit afraid to make these calls to ask people. But somebody said to me once, Marlene, don't ever be afraid to ask because they have a 50-50 chance. You have a 50-50 chance they'll say yes. So that's how that program came about. And so the title of that program is Pairings. So.
And that's coming up on November 20th.
Right.
So you actually come up with the idea, and I know that you've had music commissioned before.
Right.
Which means you call people and you say, can you please produce this? This is my idea.
And we pay them.
And we pay them.
A lot.
Okay.
Okay. But it's a really cool thing to do a world premiere of a brand new piece of music, and in this case, about the beautiful autumn that we experience in Minnesota.
Sure. And it is so beautiful here.
Yeah.
So how did you choose the clarinet as was that your first musical instrument? Did you play several? I know that you are an exceptional clarinet player.
Oh, that's nice of you to
So I've
say.
heard that you were first chair. Is that the proper terminology, or is it principal?
Principal.
Principal at your college, which was St. Olaf, is that correct?
Yep.
And so it's a lot to get there. So I'm curious as to how your path was as to choosing that particular instrument. And
well, I started on the
evolved.
piano when I was little. My mom had the ability to sit down at the piano and play anything she wanted. She studied the cello as a kid, but never took piano lessons. But still, she could sit down at the piano and play anything. So she told me that when I was little, I would sit at the piano and pick out tunes and make up accompaniment to go with. Now, my mom was my big champion, so I might have just been kind of hunting and pecking. I mean, I can't believe I actually made up accompaniments to go with Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. But she tells me that I started playing the piano when I was pretty little, and then I started taking lessons when I was 7, piano lessons from my aunt, and I loved her, and she played the clarinet when she was in high school and college. So it fell naturally to me because I loved her. I wanted to kind of be like her when I was little.
Sure.
So I took up the clarinet when I was in 5th grade.
In 5th grade is when you started.
Yep, that's when most kids start wind instruments. Your hands aren't big enough to start a violin.
Okay.
No, your hands aren't big enough to start a wind instrument. If you play the violin, if you play a stringed instrument, they have quarter size and 8th size instruments. So little kids can start playing. But there aren't quarter size clarinets or 8th size clarinets. So your hands have to be big enough. So in other words, I didn't start before 5th grade. And I just loved it and just kept going with it. I played cello for a little bit too.
And you played the clarinet through college.
And through graduate school.
And through graduate school.
Yeah.
Now that you're doing conducting, how often do you actually get to play?
I play every day.
You do play every day?
Yeah, because I don't want to lose the skill.
And how often do you play every day? Is it just like a song, which could be 5 minutes or 20 minutes? Or?
I do my usual warm-up, which is some long tones, some scales, and then something I want to do. An etude. In other words, I practice for a while and then I play for a while.
And if you didn't do that, you probably wouldn't be as beautiful of a clarinetist as you are if you didn't practice every day.
Yeah, you have to practice every day. If you want to keep your skill, you must
have to practice every day.
Every day.
And then I want to talk about what performances are coming up here. We have a big, as you alluded to, we have a big concert coming up on the November 20th.
So Aaron Keefe, who is concertmaster of the Minnesota Orchestra, and Tony Ross, who's principal cellist of the Minnesota Orchestra, will be performing with us Brahms' double concerto for violin, cello, and orchestra. And we have commissioned Jordan Cox to write a piece for us, which is called A Poem for Autumn. And the poems that have inspired him to write that have been written by Minnesota Poet Laureate Joyce Sutphin. And we'll open the program with Verdi, the great overture from La Forza del Destino, the Force of Destiny. So that's going to be a fantastic program. And then in February, we are doing Brahms' Requiem at Orchestra Hall. So that'll be exciting. We'll do it here at Wayzata Community Church on February 19th, and then we'll do it at Orchestra Hall February 26th. And we will be joined by 140 voices from the Edina Chorale and Two Rivers Chorale. And soloists,
it's going to be fabulous.
Tracy Engelman and Tommy Glass will be the baritone soloist. And then in May, we are doing the entire Gustav Holst, a piece called The Planets. And we're doing it a multimedia presentation with screens showing photos of all the planets, and we'll have a guy from the University of Minnesota Astrological Society coming to talk about the planets and characteristics of each of the planets. So that's really thrilling, and that's in May.
So they're really special shows. They are really fabulous. And I hope that you put it on your calendar.
Yes.
And we will also put the website up so you can go look and see when the different programs are. I did want to put a plug in for the Orchestra Hall. We went last year, made an afternoon of it. It was really fun. And all of these are free.
Free.
Donations are always wonderful, but they're all free. I mean, this is one of the greatest treasures in our community, I think, that we have. Well, I look forward to seeing you on the 20th.
Great.
And thank you so much for coming, Marlene.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Welcome, Dr. Marion Judish, to the show. Welcome. Say, I would like you to answer the big question of what is a concert master, because you are the concert master for the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra.
I think there's several different parts to the job. One of them is artistic vision, understanding the music, being in line with the conductor's vision, making sure that what the conductor wants is implemented within the section, and then also setting the bowings so that we're all going in the same direction. And if I notice anything, I call attention to it if we need some help about different areas. So it's kind of like an overseer of the string section.
Now, one of the things you just mentioned, which I've never heard of, is the bowing. So do you all make sure that you're going this way with your bow at the same time
Yeah, we either go down or we go up.
Okay, and is that with the tempo of the music? Does it start? This is just a question that came to mind. So as you're starting with the first frame of music, the first note, is that up?
Generally it's down, and the way I look at bowing is like breathing. And so down bow would be you exhale, and up bow is you inhale.
Okay, okay, very interesting. And concertmaster is the first chair of the violin section.
Yes.
Correct? And so you are the first chair of the violin section. Now you have a doctorate in violin performance. How does one earn a doctorate? And what was your path from being a child and choosing the violin to, I'm assuming, playing in the orchestra in high school, to choosing to play in college, to choosing to continue on to actually receive a doctorate in music?
Well, I think my choice was made when I was 4 because I just fell in love with the sound of the violin, just fell in love with it. And my mother implemented it growing up because she made sure I practiced every day except for Sunday. And so I continued that practice time and increased it in college so that I always practiced a minimum of 3 hours a day. One summer I practiced 6 hours a day, and I was told that everybody practiced 6 hours a day at some time in their life. So I did that. So practicing is crucial. I played in, when I was in elementary school, we had a District 50 honor orchestra in Westminster, Colorado. And my teacher was an oboist, but he was very proud of his strings and just had a passion for string playing. And so he started this big honors orchestra, and that's how I got started playing in orchestra.
And actually doing the performing versus,
Yes.
so that was your first area of performance. And then how did you make the path to receiving a doctorate?
I majored in violin performance for every level as a bachelor degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate. And there was a lot of requirements. You had to give 5 recitals, I think, for my doctorate. I had to give 5 solo recitals and 2 chamber music recitals. So I had a string quartet that I played in as well, which I still do.
Okay. And then how did you meet up with the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra and become their concertmaster?
I met Marlene and played for her orchestra one summer for International Piano Camp. Dr. Paul Worth gave her my name, and I just completely believed in what Marlene was doing, and she invited me to come and audition for the orchestra or play with it, and then audition for the concertmaster, which I gladly did, and I've been here ever since.
And have you ever played, as they say, the Stradivarius?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
And what was that like? Was it amazing?
Yes.
Was it? Oh, it was.
Yes, I was in New York, and I was at the Rare Violins of New York. No, it was in Philadelphia, sorry. And they had the Berthier Strad, which my violin was a copy of this particular Strad. And I can't remember, I think it was made in 1796 or something like that. And they said, would you like to play it? It's $3 million Strad. So I said, sure. And so they left me alone in this room to play the Strad. And the core of the sound, it's so big that it almost didn't fit into the instrument. So it was amazing.
Oh, interesting, yeah. Interesting. And then you had alluded to the fact that you did in fact practice as a child, and that your mother set that path for success for you of making sure that you practiced every day. When you did practice, how long did you practice? Was it 10 minutes, half hour, hour?
I practiced an hour a day until when I was in 7th grade, my teacher said you have to practice at least 2 hours a day. And so then I always practiced 2 hours a day until I went to college, and then I upped it some more. And if I could change anything now, I wish I would have practiced more.
Oh, you wish you would have practiced more. Well, I know that's just such an important part of the core of if you actually want to be a musician, you have to practice. And I just remember lots of stories from family and friends of really having a struggle getting their children to practice. So that's why I'm asking everybody that question.
Yeah. I'm very thankful to my mother, because it was just, if you don't practice, you can't do this or that, or, you know, and so it was just a normal way of life. And if you wanted to stay overnight with a relative, you had to bring your violin and practice before you could play. So
Interesting.
So I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and good luck.
oh, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. We have Dr. Brent Rundquist, who is a former past president of the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra and also a trombonist, and he brought his trombone with us. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different spectrums or scales of somebody who, like me, did next to nothing musically other than take a few years of piano lessons but never really went any further with it, to somebody that's a concert master and particularly interested in what's the path to somebody who would be able to play in the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra. So can you explain what the difference is from total novice to concert master for the spectrum?
Well, first of all, I would say that the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra is a perfect example of a very eclectic group of people. In fact, to quote Forrest Gump, I'd say it's a little bit like a box of chocolates. You never quite know what you're going to get. And frankly, most of the chocolates with the nuts in them would probably be located in the low brass section in the orchestra, actually. But there are people in this orchestra that have doctorates. Marion was a good example of that. There are people who, there are lots of student teachers in this orchestra, which means they not only know their instruments very well, are proficient at playing it, but they also know how to play all of the other instruments because they have to teach those instruments to other people. Myself, I was sort of tracking into dentistry at a very young age, but I loved music and I never really let it go. I mean, I did start the trombone in 5th grade, carried in through junior high, and then played in some jazz bands. I studied dentistry at the U, and I continued to be in the music groups at the university under Frank Bencresciuto, an incredibly passionate conductor, as Marlene is as well. But there were times where I came very close to quitting myself. I mean, there are a lot of other things going on, and all I can say is that I'm very, very glad I didn't do that. There is some perseverance involved, just continuing to go. And if you love the music and you're passionate about it, stick with it, because there is nothing else in my adulthood that fills the that void, that creative void that music does. And I can just encourage anybody, whether they are tracking in a professional way or not, just to hang with it, because music is an incredibly wonderful thing. It's one of the few universal languages in the world.
Sure, it is. And this is, of course, fabulous and in our own backyard. But what are some other areas that people, if they play an instrument, if they aren't playing for the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra, what around the Twin Cities, what would be options for people who might not be as proficient at their instrument to be in the Wayzata Symphony, or what are options out there for people?
Well, first and foremost, there are community groups everywhere. And a lot of them have a central core around the high school in the community. The band directors there, the orchestra conductors, will have connections with people who conduct community bands. Many times it'll be at the local high school. And in my own case, I became a member of the Grand Symphonic Winds, and I met other people in the group, and we kind of split off into a quintet from there. So it's a matter of kind of networking with the right people, but just be aware there are all kinds of community groups to get involved in. Tracking down a private teacher, if you want to take some private lessons, is not difficult. If it's an acoustic instrument, there are places like the Homestead Pick and Parlor and other places like that where they literally will have jam sessions where they just get together as a group and just play bluegrass music at certain times during the week. So there are all kinds of opportunities. But I think the first step would be to talk to the high school music directors, and even as an adult, even if you don't have a child in the music program, they can let you know how you can get hooked up with other musicians in the area, regardless of your skill level.
Oh, that's good to know. That's excellent to know. And then, what is a good way to start a foundation? How can parents properly encourage or provide that proper pathway to having a love of music, a love of playing an instrument, whether it be through high school, through college, or beyond?
the way to start out and to foster that kind of passion music is just to immerse your kids in music. Now that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to, it doesn't have to be a heavily orchestrated event. It can be as simple as instead of having 24-hour news on the television, have music going on in the background, in the house, in the background all the time, whether it's classical, pop music, all of that registers in the brain. So I think that's the first step. And then McPhail has all kinds of programs, even for young kids, where they basically just get together and bang on things, you know, and I'm sure that we have a lot of great percussionists in the state because of that. But I think that that is a great way. But I honestly think that immersing your kids in music any way you can is the best way to do that. From there, I mean, if we look at how kids admire people, you see a lot of kids admiring athletes.
Right, right.
Because you turn on the television, you see a football game, and you see kids who want to be just like that athlete. Well, there are lots of ways to put your kids in positions where they can see professional musicians on stage so that they admire them and want to do what they do. So take your kids to orchestra concerts, to rock and roll concerts, even down to the Dakota or jazz clubs around the Twin Cities. Just immerse them in it. Let some of these people become their heroes. Let them become people that they want to emulate and be like.
And that's such a great idea to bring them, and what better place than the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra, because if they get a little bit antsy, you can leave, but at least they're being exposed to the different instruments, the music, the sound, everything. It's a wonderful idea.
I won't deny that. In fact, I actually have to, in my own family, my parents played the Carpenters relentlessly. And I've got to believe that there's part of my brain that picked up Karen Carpenter's pitches, and they've got to be locked into my brain, I've got to believe, because of all the times that Top of the World was playing and Rainy Days and Mondays, I would say, yeah.
Huh? You're dating your parents to my date. And we've always heard it's never too late. How can somebody who's like always wanted to play the piano get started?
First thing is to realize that there's no time like the present, and like anything else that you do, you just literally have to do it. It's easy for me to say, having played an instrument since 5th grade. However, I have, over the past 5 years, I've taken up the guitar. So I have relived what it's like to have an instrument that feels completely foreign in my hands again. So I've had an idea, you know, of how difficult it really is to start up again. But the joy that's achieved from it is definitely worth the time that you put in. It's just like anything else. The time that you put in is the time you're going to get out. And you don't have to be able to play complicated Chopin piano pieces. Even if you sit down and play hot cross buns on the piano, there's a lot of passion to be derived. You may get goosebumps from that too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And one last question for you, only because I'm hoping to somehow or another help parents encourage music with their children. How often did you practice as a child?
Quite honestly, it was a couple of times a week. I hope Marlene is not hearing that, but and it kind of goes in waves. And what I would tell you is that there are times when you, like anything else, where you just seem like you're engrossed in it, and I would practice relentlessly, and other times where there are other things going on, and I would kind of fade off. Also, we tend to reach certain plateaus when we learn. We can just sort of coast along for a while, and all of a sudden we can realize, oh my gosh, this instrument that's in my hands, we can actually make music with that.
Right.
So I would say practice as much as you can, but just because you don't practice every day doesn't mean you can't go on to enjoy music.
You can still end up at the Wayzata Symphony Orchestra.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
A pleasure. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to check out their different performances throughout the winter. Remember, all performances are free and donations are always welcome. Thanks for watching. I'm Jennifer Ray. We'll see you next time on The Pulse.